first thing we're going to do to put the rear wheel together is to lubricate the adjuster. Put some never seize on the thread and we'll wind it in all the way in to the bottom. Then we'll take one of the legs and we'll put a bit of grease on that to turn that around so that the slot's there for the bolt. Again, we put the slot towards where the bolt goes in. Now we're going to put the seal on the shaft. This just keeps a water type seal, keep the dirt out. So we're going to put the bolts for the adjuster in through the big hole, drop them down, put them through the holes that they locate. I'm going to do the same with this other one. It's very tight and awkward. We'll do that. Now we're going to have to offer the adjuster in and try not to lose all of this. Once you get the bolt started, hold the adjuster towards you and it allows you to get the wrench past the bolt head and work both bolts so that you don't pull it in too tight and can't get on the opposing bolt. On the rear drum, the expander is fully floating, so we don't worry about centralising the adjuster. We're merely going to tighten it up and allow the fully floating expander to move to centralise the shoe. So we'll go all the way with this. So we need to put the handle on the adjuster and the locking nut, and we'll do that now. So we've locked that. So we're now ready to put the expander in. So we'll pass the linkage through the hole and we'll push our rubber seals through all the way, and then we'll pick up the hole. Now we've got to get our Thackeray washers on. So we'll need the aid of a magnet at this point. And we've got to put a flat washer on. Like so. Now we've got to get the nut on. So you get the nuts on and we're going to tighten them up. As I said, you've got the Thackeray washers, and this is fully floating. This moves up and down all the time, so it self-centers. We're going to pull them in, and the Thackeray washer will give us our movement. So we just pull them up till they're snug, and then we have to put our split pins in. We push those in. Now we'll take a small screwdriver and we'll bend out one leg. Once you've got your split pins bent, that'll complete that part of it. So we're going to put the rubber seals onto the rod, or onto the expander and the rod. You have to work past the gaiter. There's a groove on the expander at that point. Now we'll take our rubber cover . So we've got the water excluder in the groove on the expander, and we've got the rubber cover, the rod water excluder, into the groove on the knurled nut. Before we can set up the rear brakes, we need to take the compensator rod out that goes to the servo indirectly. So we'll take this pin out and then we'll be able to set up the adjustment in the drums correctly. Now we have that one off, what we can do is we'll put our expander rod back in. Pins are nice and long, make them easy to bend. With that done, we're now ready to put our shoes on inside the drum, and then we'll adjust everything before we put this rod back on. So we'll put the spring in the shoes on those two holes there. We'll lubricate the post for the linkage. And then we'll put our linkage on. Move the half shafts to get the nuts out of the way. So now we'll take the shoes and we'll put it on the bottom adjuster first. And now we're going to, with our linkage, and lift the shoe and place it into the adjuster. We got a little bit of a twist there. Just push that around, like so. And we'll bring this up, like so. This allows us to bring the linkage into play, into that area there. So our pins will go in that one. That's in there. Then the clips to hold the pins in are in there. And we'll put our clip, our bolt in our clip. We'll tighten the two bolts up. So we'll put our spring on and work the hook through the line, through the shoe, and we'll bring it up over our peg, like so. So now we're ready to put the drum on. Get ourselves nicely central, like so. We'll put our hubcap holder on. Tighten up the screws. And all we're going to do now is adjust up the free play. We'll adjust up the brakes till they no longer move, and then we will release the star adjuster until we have free running. We'll do the same on the other side and then adjust our compensator rod to give us no free play. Okay, now we need to adjust this compensator rod to give us no free play at this end. We've actually taken a lot of play out by adjusting the brakes, and we're going to have to let it back a little bit, and I think that's it. So we need to take as much free play out as we can, and we'll put the pressure forwards on the rod. So yes, that's us. and we pin this up. And we lock up our lock nut. You can see how much free play we got rid of at the drum. That will improve our pedal travel. And that's the compensator rod adjusted. Have your assistant pump the lever forwards and wait till the bubbles clear from the bottle. You keep pumping until the bubbles disappear. Just keep pumping until the you'll see a movement of fluid, and then you'll ask your assistant to hold the lever forwards. We'll close the nipple, and that brake is now bled. We'll go and do the same thing on the other side, and that will bleed the hydraulic system. If you were planning to rebuild the master cylinder as part of your project, you must bleed the brakes after you have completed the rebuilding and installation. So we're going to remove the master cylinder. The first thing we're going to do is remove the hydraulic fitting from the front of the master cylinder, so we'll do that first. You can't really get too much each turn, so it takes a little while to wind the fitting all the way out. We are out of there. So what we'll do is we will pull the cylinder off the pipe rather than trying to pull the fitting out along the pipe because it's seized up. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to remove the bolts that go through the bracket and the master cylinder, and we're going to remove the bolts that hold the bracket to the chassis. And we're going to loosen the bolts off and pull them out of the master cylinder. And after we get those out, we'll move on to the bolts that hold the bracket to the chassis. Okay, so we'll remove the last bolt. And then we'll go on and take the bolt out of the bracket at the front here. It is a nut and a bolt, so we'll get a wrench on behind to hold the head of the bolt. So we're going to remove the bracket that holds the rod that goes forward to the servo just to get it out of the way and allow us to drop the bracket. So we've got a couple of 2BA nuts and bolts there. So we'll take the second of the 2 bolts down, slide that bracket out of the way. We can just slip the nut on there for now so that we don't have to fight the bolt out between the master cylinder push. So we're going to remove the through bolt that supports the actuating rod. This is going to release the bracket and allow us to release the master cylinder from the pipe and the push rod. We've slid that off the fitting, and now we're going to slide the master cylinder off the push rod, and that's the master cylinder down. We're going to now remove the servo. These two rods go up to the servo and are joined to the master cylinder actuating lever here, and this is the bolt we're going to remove. We take the nut off, and then we're going to have to push the bolt out, and that's going to allow us to pull the arm off there. The next thing we're going to do is remove this panel, this under tray. It's just held on by 4/4 bolts. We'll slip those out. Take the last one out. Drop the panel. That gives us access to the securing bolt that holds the servo to the transmission. The next thing we've got to do is remove these bolts that hold the clevis pins in on the two arms. So we'll do that. Let's take a screwdriver and slip it under the slot. Gives you a little bit of leverage to pull the pin out. You get a bit sticky over a period of time. Good. That will release the bottom, and that allows us to see the bolt that secures the top rod or the So we'll slip the other pin out. That allows us to remove the rods. So we're going to remove the split pins from the brake pedal rod and the rod to the compensator, which causes the activation of the servo. To do this, we have to remove these two cotter pins or split pins, and this is extremely difficult because of their location and the way that they're in. These two pins are actually in incorrectly. This pin to the outside of the car is correct, and the other one should be facing the engine. The split pin should be on the engine side. For now, we've just got to struggle to get these two split pins out, and we use anything we can to get them out because of their tight location. So we've managed to get one leg out. We've managed to get that out now. Okay, so we're going to pull out the inside split pin like so. Now we're going to have to push the pins out. Can you let the pedal go, Dan? Thanks.
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
So what we're going to have to do now is we're going to have to loosen the lock nuts on the servo, because the inner pin won't come out, and this will give us more travel at that point and allow us to spread those enough to get that second pin out. With two wrenches, we're going to use the scissor grip and squeeze them together. That loosens the lock nut, and that will allow us to undo the outside nut like so, and then loosen the inside nut, and that in turn will allow the other rod to come forward enough. So we'll push that, push the clevis pin out, and that frees up our servo there. So now we'll take this 3/8 bolt out of the end which will take the servo off the gearbox. So we'll do that now. We'll pull the bolt right out. And we'll wiggle the servo off the pins. You can see the pins up there. Take it forwards. Now you want to be very careful at this point not to damage the cover, the spring cover on the pins that stick out. So it takes a little bit of manoeuvring, especially with this one, because the engine's out and the servo and the gearbox are a little tight to the chassis. We managed that there. We didn't have any damage, and that's the servo down. This, of course, would not be the normal situation when you take a master cylinder off a car that has been used on a daily basis. But many of you may encounter a car that's sat for a good long time and want to bring it back to life. So what I did, as you saw it previously, is I took the fitting out and I sprayed some penetrating oil and let it sit for a few minutes. And I've put pressure by using a soft punch on the top, and I'm aiming to push the piston out to the point that we can get the innards out. We really do want to save the master cylinder. Because with a new sleeve in it, and perhaps the valve that I'm pushing on changed, this can come back to life and be a useful piece of equipment again. Now we're winning, we're nearly out now, so I'll keep. You can see that the spring is still pushing me back inside, so I have to push on that to get it to come out. So what we've managed to do there, you can see, is we've pushed the piston out. A rubber seal used to be here, and what it's done is changed into a grease-like substance, or a tar. So we'll continue to pull it out if we can. That's the piston. It's still in reasonably good shape. Nothing too bad. We'll clean it up and see what we get, but that's still a useful item. So you can see what the cup washer should have been. We push the spring and the cup seal and the metal plate out. You can see our pounding put a bit of a tweak in the spring, but certainly not too much damage, and we managed to get that all out. We'll change that spring out. There's a valve in the end that I was talking about, and we've pounded that a bit, but we can find another one of those. And this used to be a cup washer, and that was a seal. That's the valve, and that's how that master cylinder comes apart. In a normal situation, this would have just come out, floated out once we took the clip out. But there, all the pieces are there, and when we put the sleeved master cylinder together, you'll see how it all turns out. That's the master cylinder stripped. We're going to clean this up, as I said earlier. We'll glass bead it, send it out for cab plating, and then get the sleeve put in it, and then it'll be as good as new. This is a servo with the original clip. You can see the spring there and the cover over the dust release. So we're going to slip this off. Like so. As I say, you can see that the dust release there. This, of course, is also an oil trap, and I'm not sure that we'll leave that open when we put it back together, but I'll show you that on the assembly. Again, we don't want to be too tough on it because we don't want to damage the cover. The covers are very expensive, and we want to obviously save it if at all possible. Somebody's quite likely glued it on there. That's using a Bostik arrangement was one of the things they did. We're going to have to put a bit of pressure on it. Again, as I say, we want to be pretty gentle because we don't want to lose the cover. So we'll ease that off, like so. There's a good old-fashioned servo lining covered in oil. So this is all covered in oil, you can see that there. And we'll take that out of there, put that down. Now we're going to take the servo apart. I'm going to take this, I'm going to slip it in the vise to hold on to it, and then we're going to disassemble the mechanism. Hold it there. We're going to take the nuts. As you remember, we loosened the lock nut to spread these to get the cotter pins out. Take the two nuts off. Another nut, a washer, and then we'll take this out. Now this has 3 balls in it, or should have 3 balls in it. You can see the 3 balls inside there, which it should be. And we'll take the race out. We'll lay that down there. Next we'll take the race cover out. Put that there. We're going to take the 2 arms, take the first one. And on here you can see this has a wavy washer. This was a modification. This wavy washer was a modification to stop the arms sticking together. Take the other arm off. Take the inner race out. Then we've got a felt inside a cup washer. There's a servo plate. And there's the shaft. And that's all the pieces that are included in the servo. What we're going to do with this piece is we're going to clean the degrease it, and we'll clean it off, and then we'll glass bead it, and we'll send that out for CAD plating. So we're going to remove the oily servo lining from the servo plate. We do the bang it in the center. That allows us to turn around and find the rivets. So we'll put it on the set of rivets. We'll knock the heads off with the drill. So we'll move around. You only want to take the heads off. You don't want to be drilling the steel fingers in this case. So you want to relieve enough pressure that we can push the rivets out, but not to drill the fingers inside. Go around to the next set. I keep close attention to how much rivets left, and we'll go round to the last 3. When we've done that, we'll go to the vise and we'll tap them through, but we'll support the finger as best we can so that the pressure is only on the rivet. Take a taper punch. All the time keeping the support on the finger, because you'll bend it off or break it. I'll explain that to you when we get the plate off. So you can see there that these little fingers are riveted to the plate, and if you didn't support that very carefully when you're beating on them, you could easily tear that out. So that was why I kept saying support them. So you can see this is a later version type servo plate. It's fine. It was developed to give you a little more cushion, a little more give when the pressure goes in. If you have a solid plate, that's fine. You just use whichever one you've got. And that completes the disassembly of the servo. So we're now going to rebuild the master cylinder. We've had the master cylinder sleeved, cab plated and sleeved, and now we're ready to put it back together. First thing we're going to do is rebuild this valve. The valve's the first thing to go into the master cylinder, and it's made up of two seals. We have to get this cup arrangement into the groove at the bottom of this valve, which is a little bit tricky. And to help us a bit, we're going to use a bit of rubber grease. This grease actually comes in the more modern cars, the Silver Cloud master cylinders, but it's quite useful, and it'll make our job a little easier. So we'll lubricate the edge of this up. We put that in like so. We're going to take a punch and see how well we do. We did pretty good. You can see we've got almost all of it in except one little bit, and I think it'll go in. And you can see it's in there completely now. I was quite lucky. You might have to work quite a bit at that. So now we're going to put this seal on the valve. That goes in the groove. Again, you've got to work it in. They used to supply these valves complete, rebuilt. So if you do run into an old kit, you may very well have a new valve in there, but they don't come like that anymore. And we've pushed that all the way in, a little bit more there. You can see that's all the way in. This actually goes on the end of the spring like so. So we can put that into the cylinder. Next thing to go into the cylinder is the cup. This is the cup seal. The cup goes in onto the spreader that we just put in, and we'll lubricate the rubber. We'll put that in, making sure it stays that way. You can see that there. The next thing we put in is this washer, like a Belleville washer arrangement. What that does is it stops the seal sticking to the piston. But before we put the piston in, we're going to put the seal that goes in at the end. Ease that over the large part of the seal. Get down. You can see we've got to get it up over that groove. Might need a bit of a screwdriver to assist us, just to take that over. Just work it around. You can see that's right in that groove. We'll put a bit of lubrication, a bit of rubber grease on there, like so, to help us put it in. We're going to put that in there. We're going to have to push it down because the washer and the clip are what's going on next. And probably need something that will get you to the bottom of the piston. So we're not going to get it in as easily as we might. We're going to have to get the lip into the cylinder. What I'm doing is pushing the edge of the seal down, which you can see I've done. Now I've got to do a bit of a trick shot because I've got to hold the piston down and get the washer and the clip. Going to give myself a little more room if I can. I'll put one end of this in. I'm going to try and work it around now to get the other section in, which is quite a feat on your own. I got very lucky there, managed to get it in. You can see that that's in the groove. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to check that the piston goes up and down freely, which it does. And now I can put in the plug and the fitting in the end. So we make sure we've got the copper washer on the fitting. We put that in the master cylinder. Seal that up. Now the rubber dust cover needs to go on the back end of the cylinder. And then the rod that pushes, which is still on the car, goes in there, and that's us pretty well ready to put it on the car. We're now ready to rivet the servo lining onto the servo plate. As I mentioned in the strip down, there's two different types of plates, so you use two different lengths of rivets. For this one with the fingers, you use a shorter rivet, and the one with no fingers, you use a longer rivet. We've got the short rivets for this job, and we're going to put rivet in the lining, and we just drop that into there, put that in, push that into there. We've got a punch in the vise. We support that like so. It helps if you've got something there just to support that. Gives you good control. You heard the note change, the sound change, so we knew we were tight enough. Do the next one. Feel that note change again. That's that. So we're going to get the spring off. Go around to the next one. So the note's changed, and that's all 9 rivets in there, and that completes that process of riveting on the servo lining. We're now going to flatten the servo plate and put the servo together or rebuild the servo. You can see here that one of these plugs is sticking out a bit. For demonstration purposes, I've left a plug sitting out a little bit there. This servo plate had 2 holes that allowed or would have allowed oil to go right into the servo plate. And in an effort to stop it, I've pushed in a couple of stainless steel plugs to block it off. I've found them with corks in them, I've found them with pieces of wood driven into them, but whatever you decide to do, you need to block those holes up if you have holes there. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this in the vise and squeeze that in the rest of the way. Depending on what facilities you have, you can decide what you want to do for your thing. So that pushes that in flush, and that solves the any potential oil leak problem we may have. And I'm going to put this in the vise, and I'm going to show you how to flat the servo. This is the surface at which the servo lining runs. And the servo is just a clutch. It's a clutch that pulls the master cylinder on. As you probably are aware, you have no direct contact with the master cylinder. When you press your foot on the brake, the rod goes to the servo, squeezes the arms and pushes the lining against this surface. The rotation of the servo causes the master cylinders to be pulled on. So we need to have a good surface here, the good flat surface that will pull that clutch on and give you a good brake. So what I do is I take a bit of emery cloth, take a full sheet, and I tear it into strips and I use it on a file. So I lay that under the file like so, and then I just, keeping it flat, I work my way around the plate. Generally there's marks in them. This one is particularly flat. I guess it may very well have been flatted before it was sent for CAD plating. Sometimes these surfaces have chrome plate. There was a time that a good number of these were plated with a hard chrome. What we do is we strip the hard chrome off and then go back to the steel, and this gives you a good surface. It allows you a good area. And we'll just work our way around here. You can see we're almost all the way round. At that area there you can still see it's a bit shiny, so we'll give that a little bit more. We've worked our way all the way around the disc, got a nice surface all the way around, and we're now going to assemble the rest of the servo. So we're now going to build the servo motor. We'll put the shaft in the vise for support. We'll take the plate, we'll pop that over the top. We take our cup washer. So we take some grease and we'll lubricate the felt washer, and we'll put it in our cup washer. And we put the felt down first, drop that over there. So we'll centralize that, push that in. Then I'm going to take our bearing, our inner bearing cover. We put that in. And that's going to take a little bit of a tap. So we take our soft hammer. You can see that rolls in there nice and easy, goes round and round. Then we'll take our race, and I'm going to pack that full of grease. I'll squeeze it right through the balls there. You can see the old grease coming out, which is a good thing. We want grease all the way through it. We're going to plop that over the top. Push that down. We're going to take an arm. Use a little bit of grease inside there. Spread it around. Drop that over. Then we're going to take our wavy washer. A little bit of grease on that. Get our other arm. Same procedure. And over there. We're going to take our outer race. Put that. We're going to have to tap that. Just again, same procedure. Let's get it started. way home. Still allows that to move. Take out ball race. Try and push some grease in the sides of the balls. Touch more. Put that over there. We take one of the activating arms, and it's the one with the groove in the back. We put that on there. We're going to put the grease on all of those ramps to hold the balls. You can see the ramp there. And at the base of each one of those ramps, we'll put the ball. Just before we put that on there, spin that back and forth, make sure there's no lumps. And that's good, so we'll just put that on there. In the right position, we'll put that down. And that's that part. So we're going to put the washer and the two nuts, the adjusting nut and the locking nut, on the shaft. And you need to make sure, for the purposes of fitting the servo to the transmission or the gearbox, that this is flush at this point here. You can see that there's no thread sticking out there. And we nip that up tight like that so it doesn't twist. This gives us the option of turning this when we're fitting it to the car, because that turns that and allows us to pick up the pins on the transmission. We then take our servo lining and plate, we put that on there. You can see when I rotate the bottom or the top plate, the holes have to line up for the pins. So those two sets of holes have to be in line when we put it on the pins on the transmission. If you only get the first set of holes, which is in the plate, the servo will fall off. So it's essential that you do that. So then we take our cover, our spring cover, and I'll just show you a test there for this to make sure it's in good shape. If these get damaged or bent in or something, they are a crucial part of the operation of the servo, because when they push down, they push the servo away from the plate, the servo lining from the plate. So they must be in good shape. They mustn't have any holes in them or gouges or kinks. So we'll put that back on there. And then all I do with these, as a lot of things have gone on over the years, but it's pretty well, if you've got a lot of oil leaks underneath the car, the oil's going to end up inside the servo. So there's no point in trying to glue this up and put all kinds of rubber and everything. Over the past years, we found that the best thing to do is to take some insulating tape, some black plastic tape, and just wind it around. Like so. I just give it two layers all the way around. I'll turn it over so that you can see the other side. And you can see that the tape has run over the lip like so. So I'll bring it back because we're going to fit the clip. But before we do that, you need to understand where the clip has to be. The servo rods lay like this, with the two rods going back to the master cylinder there. So as the servo winds up and moves around, this clip also moves. So the clip must be in a position so that it doesn't strike the top of the chassis or the cross member for the rear of the gearbox. So we have to position the clip at the front of the servo, like so, so that it can go, when it winds up, it can go there, and when it's in reverse, it can go there, and give us a position so that it doesn't touch the chassis and make noises or pull the clip around. So we're going to position the servo clip at this point, and we'll just tighten the screw just a little bit. All we're doing is putting a small amount of pressure on the cover. We don't want to drive the clip into the cover so that when the servo lining is turning, it wears the cover away. Pull it up, right up to the lip. We'll just give it a final squeeze. What we've managed to do there is to tighten it up without driving this part of the clip into the cover. And that's the servo rebuilt. It's ready to go on the car. So we're going to fit the master cylinder now. We're going to pick up the push rod, put it inside the rubber, and then we're going to put the fitting in. The first thing to do is to get the fitting in.
It allows me to screw that all the way in. If you leave it and tighten the bracket up, you'll have a much more difficult time getting the fitting to start. So we tighten the fitting up, and we'll fit the bracket. We'll put 2 bolts through.
Drop it down, offer it up to the holes.
We'll get ourselves a nut and a spring washer on the inside.
Got the front ones are very tight, it's very close to the chassis, so I have to push the bolt in, and we'll do the same with this one.
We'll go on to another one. So push that in.
So we'll put this front bolt, the front bracket bolt in, and lift it up, put the washer, put the nut, lift that up. So that gives us all those bolts. So we'll put the bracket up, slip the nuts off.
Now we'll put our actuating arm up. We'll spread the bracket just a little bit. Work it through. Now washer and nut on. So now we can tighten up all our bolts.
And that's the master cylinder attached to the chassis. We're now ready to fit the servo.
Now we're going to fit the servo. We're going to put it on the 3 pins that stick out of the transmission. We're going to be careful not to damage our spring plate. Put it up.
work it away, work it through. Rotate it. We worked it through there. Now we've got to pick up the 3 pins, which we did, and we're going to rotate. Which we've got, so we can put our bolt through. So we'll tighten up the centre bolt. Just check that you're still on your pins. Your pins haven't moved. There we go. Put a great deal of pressure on that bolt, make it very tight. We're ready now to put the actuating rods on, and that's the rod from the pedal and the rod to the compensator. So this is quite a difficult job on these cars because they use clevis pins, and you should by rights put the clevis pin from the inside. The head of the clevis pin should be on the inside with the 2 split pins on the outside. That was how they were originally. A lot of times people put them in with the heads on there and put the split pins in, but it's there's a chance that they can jam up, so we're going to do it the right way. So we've put the pin in the pedal rod, and now we're going to try and spread the 2 actuating levers. Okay, I've spread the 2 levers, and I'm going to try and put the clevis pin through the 2 levers, like so. Now we have to put the other lever in. So we're going to push the 2nd pin in, like so. Now what we have to do is put the split pins or cotter pins in. So now we need to bend those over, and however you can do it, I prefer to use these long pins and work them around. Now we're going to fit the master cylinder rods to the servo. Put the horseshoe on, and up the bolt. Brought the rod in from the back side of the car. We've put our pin through the eye of the rod and into the arm of the lever, and then we've put a horseshoe clip and then the bolt into the rod to secure it all. And we're now going to rotate the servo so that we can put our 2nd rod on. So we put our rod in to our arm, our servo arm. We put the clevis pin through, the horseshoe clip on, and secured it with the bolt. Now we're going to rotate it back so that we can put the bolt in the master cylinder actuating lever. So we're going to put the bushing into the 2 rods, like so. We're going to put the 2 spacers on either side. We're going to bring the rod forwards, like so, and then we're going to pass our bolt through the, and we're going to put a washer and a nut on the bolt, and we'll tighten that up. Now we've got the master cylinder rods joined to the servo, and we need to adjust the servo now. So we'll loosen the lock nut on the end of the servo, and have your assistant turn the wheel until the servo starts to spin. Turn the wheel, please. Okay, the servo started to pick up there. So now what we'll do is we'll loosen the servo off by 2 flats. 1, 2. That's freed up the servo. So we'll take the locking nut in to the adjusting nut. Okay, now we'll tighten the locking nut against the adjusting nut. Hold the adjusting nut and lock the locking nut, and that's the servo adjusted. We've jacked the car down, and obviously we can't do it, but the next step would be to road test the car and check for leaks. Good luck with your project, and we'll see you on the next show.
For more information on other programs in this series or upcoming technical seminars, please contact us at the number on your screen.